Hello. Okay, so we're going to go on to the next chapter now. We're on chapter 2, An Errand to Town. One morning in September, the grass was white with frost. It was only a light frost that melted as soon as the sunshine touched it. It was gone when Laura looked out at the bright morning. But at breakfast, Pa said that such an early frost was surprising. "Will it hurt the hay?" Laura asked him. And he said, "Oh no, such a light frost will only make it dry faster when it's cut. But I'd better get a hustle on it, for it won't be long until it's too late to make hay." He was hustling so fast that afternoon that he hardly stopped to drink when Laura brought him the water. He was mowing in the big slough. "You cover it up, Half Pint," he said, handing back the jug. "I'm bound and determined to get this patch mowed before sundown." He chirped to Sam and David, and they started again, drawing the whirling machine. Then suddenly the machine gave a clattering kind of yelp, and Pa said, "Whoa." Laura hurried to see what had happened. Pa was looking at the cutting bar. There was a gap in the row of bright steel points. The cutter bar had lost one of its teeth. Pa picked up the pieces, but they could not be mended. "There's no help," Pa said. "It means buying another section." There was nothing to say to that. Pa thought a minute and then said, "Laura, I wish you'd go to town and get it. I don't want to lose the time. I can keep mowing after a fashion while you're gone. Be as quick as you can. Ma will give you the 5 cents to pay for it. Buy it at Fuller's Hardware." "Yes, Pa," Laura said. She dreaded going to town because so many people were there. She was not exactly afraid, but strange eyes looking at her made her uncomfortable. She had on a clean calico dress to wear, and she had shoes. While she hurried to the house, she thought that Ma might let her wear her Sunday hair ribbons and perhaps Mary's freshly ironed sunbonnet. "I have to go to town, Ma," she said, rushing in breathlessly. Carrie and Mary listened while she explained, and even Grace looked up from her looked up at her with big, somber blue eyes. "I will go with you to keep you company," Carrie volunteered. "Oh, can she, Ma?" Laura asked. "If she can be ready as soon as you are," Ma gave permission. Quickly they changed to fresh dresses and put on their stockings and shoes. But Ma saw no reason for the hair ribbons on a weekday, and she said Laura must wear her own sunbonnet. "It would be faster," Ma said, "if you took care to keep yours so." Laura's bonnet was limp from hanging down her back, and the strings were limp too. But that was Laura's own fault. Ma gave her 5 cents from Pa's pocketbook, and with Carrie she hurried away towards town. They followed the road made by Pa's wagon wheels, past the well, down the dry, grassy slope into the big slough, and on between the tall slough grasses to the slope up on the other side. The whole shimmering prairie seemed strange then. Even the wind blowing the grasses had a wilder sound. Laura liked that, and she wished they did not have to go into town, where the false fronts of the buildings stood up square-topped to pretend that the stores behind them were bigger than they really were. Neither Laura nor Carrie said a word after they came to Main Street. Some men were on their store porches, and 2 teams of wagons were tied to hitching posts. Lonely on the other side of Main Street stood Pa's store building. It was rented, and two men sat inside it talking. Laura and Carrie went into the hardware store. Two men were sitting on nail kegs and one on a plow. They stopped talking and looked at Laura and Carrie. The walls behind the counters glistened with tin pans and pails and lamps. Laura said, "Pa wants a mowing machine section, please." The man on the plow said, "He broke one, has he?" And Laura said, "Yes, sir." She watched him wrap it in paper, the sharp, shining, three-cornered tooth. "He must be Mr. Fuller's." She gave him the 5 cents. Taking the package in her hand, she said thank you and walked out with Carrie. That was over, but they did not speak until they had walked out of town. Then Carrie said, "You did that beautifully, Laura." "Oh, it was just buying something," Laura replied. "I know, but I feel funny when people look at me. I feel not scared exactly," Carrie said. "There's nothing to be scared of," Laura said. "We mustn't ever be scared." Suddenly, she told Carrie, "I feel the same way." "Do you really?" "I didn't know that. You don't act like it. I always feel so safe when you're there," Carrie said. "You are safe when I'm there," Laura answered. "I'd take care of you. Anyway, I'd try my best." "I know you would," Carrie said. It was nice walking together. To take care of their shoes, they did not walk in the dusty wheel tracks, and walked on the harder strip in the middle where only horses' hooves had discouraged the grass. They were not walking hand in hand, but they felt as if they were. Ever since Laura could remember, Carrie had been her little sister. First she had been a tiny baby, then she had been baby Carrie. Then she had become the clutcher and tagger, always asking why. Now she was 10 years old enough to be really a sister. And they were out together, away from even Pa and Ma. Their errand was done and off their minds, and the sun was shining and the wind was blowing. The prairie spread far all around them. They felt free and independent and comfortable together. "It's a long way around to where Pa is," Carrie said. "Why don't we go this way?" And she pointed toward the part of the slope where they could see Pa and the horses. Laura answered, "That's the way through the slough." "It isn't wet now, is it?" Carrie asked. "All right, let's," Laura answered. "Pa didn't say to go by the road, and he did say to hurry." So they did not follow the road that turned to the cross in the slough. They went straight into the tall sloth grass. At first it was fun. It was rather like going into a jungle picture in Pa's big green book. Laura pushed ahead between the thick clumps of green grass that gave way, rustling, and closed again across Carrie. The millions of coarse grass stems and their slender long leaves were greeny gold and golden green in their own shades. The earth was cracked with dryness underfoot, but a faint smell of damp lay under the hot smell of grass. Just above Laura's head, the grass tops swished in the wind, but down at their roots was a stillness unbroken only where Laura and Carrie went wading through it. "Where's Pa?" Carrie asked suddenly. Laura looked around at Carrie. Carrie's peaked little face was pale in the shade of the grass. Her eyes were almost frightened. "Well, we can't see him from here," Laura said. They could see only the leaves of the thick grass waving and weaving. "The hot sky overhead, he's right ahead of us. We'll come to him in a minute," she said as confidently. But how could she know where Pa was? She could not even be sure where she was going. where she was taking Carrie. The smothering heat made sweat trickle down the back of her throat, and her backbone she felt cold. She remembered the children near Brooksing, lost in the prairie grass. The sloth was worse than Prairie. Ma had always been afraid that Grace would get lost in the sloth. She listened for the whirl of the mowing machine, but the sound of the grasses filled her ears. There was nothing in the flickering shadows of their thin leaves, blowing and tossing higher than her eyes, to tell her where the sun was. The grasses, bending and swaying, did not even tell the direction of the wind. Those clumps of grass would hold up no weight at all. There was nothing anywhere that she could climb on to look out above them, to see beyond them and know where she was. "Come along, Carrie," she said cheerfully. She must not frighten Carrie. Carrie followed trustfully, but Laura did not know where she was going. She could not even be sure that she was walking straight. Always a clump of grass was in her way. She must go to the right or to the left. Even if she went to the right of one clump, the grass, and to the left of the next clump, that did not mean that she was not going in a circle. Lots of people go in circles, and many of them never find their way home. The sloth went on for miles or more of bending, swaying grasses, too tall to see beyond, too yielding to climb. It was wide. Useless. Laura walked straight ahead. They might never get out of it. "We've gone so far, Laura," Carrie panted. "Why don't we come to Pa?" "He ought to be right around here somewhere," Laura answered. She could not follow their own trail back to the safe road. Their shoes left no tracks on the heat-baked mud and the grasses. The endless swaying grass with their low leaves hanging, dried and broken, were all alike. Carrie's mouth opened a little. Her big eyes looked up at Laura, and they said, "I know, we're lost." Her mouth shut without a word. If they were lost, they were lost. There was nothing to say about it. "We'd better go on," Laura said. "I guess so, as long as we can," Carrie agreed. They went on. They must surely have passed the place where Pa was mowing, but Laura could not be sure of anything. Perhaps, if they thought they turned back, they would really be going further away. They could only go on. Now and then they stopped and wiped their sweating faces. They were terribly thirsty, but there was no water. They were very tired from pushing through the grasses. Not one single pushed seemed hard, but going on was harder than trampling hay. Carrie's thin little face was gray-white. She was so tired. Laura thought that the grasses ahead were thinning. The shade seemed lighter there, and the tops of the grasses against the sky seemed fewer, and suddenly she saw sunshine, yellow behind the dark grass stems. Perhaps there was the pond. Oh, perhaps there was Pa's stubby field, and the mowing machine, and Pa. She saw the hay stubbles in the sunshine, and she saw the haycocks dotting it. But she heard a strange voice. It was a man's voice, loud and hearty. It said, "Get a move on, Manzo. Let's get this load in. It's coming night after a while." Another voice drawled lazily, "Aw, come on, Roy." Close together, Laura and Carrie looked out from the edge of the standing grass. The hayfield was not Pa's hayfield. A strange wagon stood there, and on its rack there was an enormous load of hay. On the high top of the load, up against the binding sky, a boy was laying. He was laying on his stomach, his chin on his hands, and his feet in the air. The strange man lifted up a huge forkful of hay and pitched it onto the boy. It buried him, and he scrambled up and out of it, laughing and shaking hay off of his head and shoulders. He had black hair and blue eyes, and his face and arms were sunburned brown. He stood up on the high load of hay against the sky and saw Laura. He said, "Hello there." They both stood watching Laura and Carrie come out of the tall standing grass like rabbits. Laura thought she wanted to turn and run back into hiding. "I thought Pa was here," she said, while Carrie stood small and still beside her. The man said, "We haven't seen anybody around here. Who is your pa?" The boy told him. "Mr. Ingalls, isn't he asked Laura. He was still looking at her. "Yes," she said, and she looked at the horses hitched to the wagon. She had seen these beautiful brown horses before, their haunches gleaming in the sun, and black manes glossy on their glossy necks. They were the Wilder boys' horses. The man and the boy must be the Wilder brothers. "I can see him from here. He's just over there," the boy said. Laura looked up and saw him pointing. His blue eyes twinkled down at her as if he had known her a long time. "Thank you," Laura said primly, and she and Carrie walked away along the road that the Morgan team and the wagons had broken through the sloth grass. "Whoa," Pa said when he saw them. "Whew," he said, taking off his hat and wiping the sweat from his forehead. Laura gave him the mowing machine section, and she and Carrie watched while he opened the toolbox, took the cutter bar from the machine, and knocked out the broken section. He set the new one in place and hammered down the rivets to hold it. "There," he said. "Tell your ma I'll be late for supper. I'm going to finish cutting this piece." The mowing machine was humming steadily when Laura and Carrie went on towards the shanty. "Were you much scared, Laura?" Carrie asked. "Well, some, but all's well that ends well," Laura said. "It was my fault. I wanted to go that way," said Carrie. "It was my fault because I'm older," Laura said. "But we've learned a lesson. I guess we'll stay on the road after this." "Are you going to tell Ma and Pa?" Carrie timidly asked. "We have to if they ask," Laura said. We'll read some more tomorrow. Say your prayers. Be thankful. I'll see y'all tomorrow.